sound bites are done.
Thank you all so much for your patience. Our SMAC members are giving us some sound bites. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to the Stone Mountain Action Coalition First Person. Simply ever doing person reports. This is our first one, so we're very excited for you all to join us. I am Gabrielle, one of the co-founder members of SMAC. We have brought our supporters here, stakeholders, and the press in our community to discuss a day of the lack of transparency and the lack of positive accountability plans from the Stone Mountain Memorial Association, the reduced opportunity for public comment or the board meetings, the legal basis supporting immediate changes to the park, and our demand for Governor Kemp to direct the SMAC board to make meaningful, positive changes to Stone Mountain Park. You will hear from a coalition of our partners today, a wealth of community leaders and civic and community organizations here. A few housekeeping rules. We do understand that we have some awesome speakers today, but we do have a time limit today, okay? But if you go over a little bit, then it's only 5 minutes. You have to do a church. So our first speaker today will be none other than one of our SMAC co-founders, Ms. Sheri.
press that were able to make it on kind of short notice, so we really appreciate y'all being here. The Stone Mountain Action Coalition recognizes the power and the influence of the press here at Stone Mountain Park. No one would have known that the park's private partner, Hershey Family Entertainment, was leaving the park due to the protests here last summer, but for WSB TV's Mark Winnie, his open records request and the subsequent reporting on the issue. So again, we appreciate you being here, and we hope y'all will continue to make this issue important. We hope that you continue to dig deep and to ask the right questions of those who are in power and who have the authority to make influence and real change here at Stone Mountain Park, including CEO Bill Stevens, the members of the Stone Mountain Memorial Association Board, and most importantly, Governor Brian Kemp. To be sure, the Stone Mountain Memorial Association Board and its CEO get their marching orders directly from Governor Kemp. He appoints the members of this board. He's the one who has the authority to remove and assign the chairperson for this board. And we know that he dictates what does or does not happen with the Confederate symbolism in this park. We believe it is the governor who decides what is a suitable and appropriate memorial to the Confederacy in 2021 at Stone Mountain Park. It's the governor who decides if the memorial to the Confederacy is good for business in Georgia or if it's not. On April 26th, most of you know that the park CEO, Bill Stevens, admitted to the public and the press that the Confederacy is not good for Stone Mountain Park. Revenues were down by 56% in 2020 from where they were in 2019. Hershey Family Entertainment and Marriott are leaving the park because of the Confederacy, and potential vendors and partners will not submit bids until the park deals with the issues around the Confederacy. CEO Stevens and Chairman Mosley want you to believe that the proposals that were voted on in May are changes that will somehow diminish or take away from the fact that Stone Mountain Park operates and celebrates the world's largest memorial to the Confederacy, and that these changes will bring back business to Stone Mountain Park. Indeed, CEO Stevens, the SMMA board, and Governor Kemp had made plans to change nothing at this park. Stone Mountain Park will continue to maintain the largest memorial to the Confederacy. This park will continue to be a lightning rod for conflict between white supremacists, segregationists, 3%ers, and Confederate flag huggers on the one hand, and anti-protesters on the other. This park will continue to maintain a space that is divisive, exclusionary, and hateful to the majority of the people who visit this park each year. In the meantime, the powers that be will continue to hide the ball, kick the can down the road until someone with real political will decides to do something about it. And please understand, because I think a lot of y'all tend to focus on that carving, the 9-story bas-relief of Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson, but that is not the only problem at this park. Stonewall Jackson Boulevard, Robert E. Lee Boulevard, Jefferson Davis Drive, John B. Gordon Drive, Admiral Raphael Semmes Drive, J.E.B. Stewart Drive, Old Howell Road, Memorial Hall Circle. These streets will continue to lead visitors around this park. Venable Lake, named for a grand wizard of the KKK, whose family and descendants still reside in this area, will remain the second largest lake on the property here. Visitors will continue to be subjected to Memorial Hall and Memorial Lawn when they attend a laser show or take a skylift to the top of the mountain. I really wish people would focus on this. There will still be 13 Confederate state viewing terraces surrounding Memorial Lawn, each celebrating the states that seceded from the Union, and each including plaques that defend slavery and deride Congress for trying to take away their property. That's still out there, folks. And nobody's talking about it but us. Nobody in that boardroom is talking about the fact that that carving is not all we're talking about. The Sacrifice and Valor Memorial Gardens that abut on the right and left, the carving, those will continue to lead visitors to believe that the Civil War was as honorable as the American Revolution, and that toiling the fields as a respectable way of life. Please go down there and visit it and see for yourself. Renaming Confederate Hall to Heritage Hall is almost as bad as just leaving it alone, when heritage is clearly a nod to those who claim that memorializing the Confederacy in Stone Mountain Park is about heritage and not hate. Historic Square will still be a plantation with actual slave cabins that do not fully contextualize slavery, nor does that area of the park even attempt to explain the removal of indigenous people from these lands. And the Confederate flag terrace that still flies right now, despite them saying they're going to remove it, at the base of Walk-Up Trail, will just be relocated for a better photo opportunity in front of the carving. Stone Mountain Park will continue to proudly fly all 4 of the Confederate flags of the Confederate States of America that were flown during the Civil War, including the battle flag. And beside the fact that the CEO and the board have proposed no changes that will actually diminish the impact of the Confederacy at this park, they have refused to be transparent and to seek any public input as to what this park should look like in the 21st century. The SMMA board reported in November of last year that CEO Stevens had been tasked with forming an inclusive and diverse committee to consider what changes should be made at Stone Mountain Park. We've never heard about that committee again. We don't know if one was ever formed. We don't know who was on it, if it was formed. And we have no idea if that committee had any influence over the proposal that was made in April by the board. CEO Stevens now says that the park will expand the Memorial Hall Museum to tell the whole story, but we've not been told who will be in charge of such an undertaking, whether the story will be influenced by indigenous experts and historical scholars, and when exactly this expansion will be completed. SMAC, as an organization, has zero confidence in CEO Stevens and the SMMA board doing justice to any proposed truth-telling exhibit. Dennis Collard, who is an attorney and also a co-founder of SMAC, is going to share with you at the conclusion of this conference why we believe the law permits the governor and the board to make the changes that SMAC has been demanding since its inception last fall. And the changes we have been asking for are just the start of transforming this park into a place of healing, transformation, and progress. The next step is public engagement. What do the citizens of Georgia, DeKalb County, and the city of Stone Mountain want this public place to reflect? The Georgia Department of Economic Development website states that Stone Mountain Park is the most visited attraction in the state of Georgia, yet no one wants to do business at this park because the state insists on continuing to glorify the Confederacy. The Stone Mountain Action Coalition demands and will continue to demand that Governor Kemp and the SMMA board make meaningful, positive, and transparent changes at this park that will not only bring back business, but that are responsive to what the citizens of the state of DeKalb County and the city of Stone Mountain want in a public space. The people do not want a park that brings harm and division and that honors the heritage of white men and women who believed in the ideology that black and brown people were less than and not entitled to all the opportunity and access that this county promises. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions later if anybody has them.
Thank you so much, Sheri. I did forget to mention, please hold all questions until the end. We will have a Q&A session at the time. I'm going to call up the next 2 speakers. I'll call up the next 3 speakers. So we're going to have next Mr. Gerald, who's a civil rights attorney and also candidate for president of the Georgia NAACP.
Thank you, and I would say it's an honor to be here with members of SMAC, but again, we are fighting the Confederacy, so we must focus our resolve. 7 years ago, Richard and myself stood with the SCLC demanding changes to Stone Mountain Park, and since that day, we've demanded that this park be inclusive and reflective of the true history of Georgia. And as a 5th generation Georgian, this park is an affront to my heritage. And so we renew our call for change. We have spoken with multiple governors and we are demanding a with this governor. It's time for Georgia to get out of the Confederacy business. It's time for Georgia to recognize that true heritage is inclusive of the African American citizens of Georgia who have been here since it was a penal colony. And so I thank SMAC for taking the leadership. I renew the call to this Georgia governor that if you're truly about bringing Georgians together, if you're truly about making Georgia #1 for business, it's time to get out of the oppression business. It's time to stop glorifying traitors. It's time to be realistic about what this mountain represents. This carving was built and carved to fight against desegregation. It's quite clear its completion in the 70s. This has nothing to do with the celebration of the Civil War. There was nothing historic that happened here. Not a battle, not any form of celebration or anything that needs to be celebrated. What we need to do is to allow this mountain to go back to its natural state. There are numerous ways that we can achieve this. I believe that the legal analysis that the Stone Mountain Action Coalition has will show that under current Georgia law, we can take the affirmative steps. It is an affront to all 3 million African Americans that currently reside in Georgia to have this park represent our heritage. We need to be realistic. This is a plantation. We will not play on a plantation. There are currently 3 slave cabins on this grounds right now without the conceptual placement of what they stand for. The mountain itself is a beautiful nature preserve. The forest and the canopy are wonderful. The lakes are enjoyable, but not when they're named for grand wizards, not when they're named for traitors. And as the son of a Vietnam veteran, the grandson of a World War II veteran, we fought for this country. We died for this country. We built this country. We built this state. So it's time for the governor, it's time for the Stone Mountain Memorial Association to come into the 21st century and realize that the sons and daughters of slaves are sick and tired of being erased. It's time for us to unify Georgia by ending the continual celebration of treason. I was in the meeting a few minutes ago with the Stone Mountain Memorial Association. I was listening to them prepare for the celebration of Independence Day. And I thought back to the celebrations that we just had on Saturday. The first time as a descendant of a slave, we were able to celebrate our Independence Day, Juneteenth. And I thought to what Frederick Douglass said, what was July 4th to a slave? And I think to myself, what would July 4th celebration be to a descendant of a chattel slave in 2021 when they will play at the end of the laser show, "Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton." Dixieland, look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Stone Mountain Memorial Association, we're laying down a charge. We told you 7 years ago that we would change the face of this mountain, all the street names, all the lakes, and we would stop the celebration of the Confederacy. We are very serious. And if it's necessary for us to call for an economic disturbance, we will continue to do that. This is the birthplace of civil rights, the home of Dr. King, the home of C.T. Vivian, the home of John Lewis, and the home of John Dale Johnson. We know how to get somebody's attention. So we send a message once again to the governor of this state. Do the right thing. Remove the carvings. Take away the names. Contextualize what this mountain is really about. And remember the sons and daughters of slaves. If If you really want to have one Georgia, let's start telling the truth about Georgia today, and we can bring the state together. Thank you. I'm Attorney Gerald, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Attorney Griggs. We also will have a man who needs no introduction, Mr. Richard Rose, who is the president of the NAACP for Atlanta. And following him, we will also have Dr. LaDena Bolton. She's the vice president for the DeKalb Young Democrats. And then we will have Madam President Derrica Williams, who is the president of the National Council on Negro Women.
Thank you. You know, truth is a funny thing. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And many times people don't let the truth get in the way of making their points. This is where we are at Stone Mountain. Last meeting we were here, there was a gentleman who said, Stone Mountain is to represent the 50,000 soldiers who lost their lives. Absolutely not. Nothing about soldiers losing their lives is at Stone Mountain. Because what they do is celebrate, as Gerald said, enslavement, child enslavement of people based on race. That's what the historic town square is about. There was no town square on Stone Mountain. This is a big rock here. There was no school. There was no burial ground. This is all about what Helen Plain said in 1922. She wanted to honor the claim because they had saved white folk from Negro domination and carpetbag rule. There's a little bit of play on words, but those were her words. That's what this is about. Because this was the home of the claim. Be clear about it. This was the home of the claim. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what they said. Helen Plain said she wanted to honor the Klan with these carvings on Stone Mountain. Marvin Griffith, governor of Georgia, said that the South was looking to Georgia to lead the fight for segregation. Listen to what they said. As a young man said in the meeting earlier, listen to what Alexander Hamilton Stevens said about what the war was about. It was clear, this is about making clear that the Negro is inferior to the white man. That's what the war was about. That's what Stone Mountain was about. That's what the Confederacy about. America is the only country in the history of the world that celebrates a failed insurrection against itself. Against itself. Let's be clear about what this is about. This is not about, this is a hateful heritage, and it's not about the past. It's never been about the dead, it's always about the living. It's about the living, it's about my living, it's about Gerald's living, it's about people who cover living. This is about the living. No monument is history. It is a political statement of the time. The time has passed for these political statements. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Dr. LaDena Bolton. I am the Vice President of the DeKalb Young Democrats. And we are an organization that represents youth from as young as 14 years old, a very impressionable age, 14 years old up to about 39 years old. So we do echo all the sentiments, the statements that were made by our previous speakers. However, the statement that I am about to make is a reflection of additional concerns that our youth, our impressionable youth here in Georgia have. So as an executive member of DeKalb Young Democrats, it's my duty, it's our duty of all of the executive members to ensure that our members, our stakeholders, our supporters, everybody, that they are consistently informed so they can be purposefully, and I want to emphasize that word, so they can be purposefully engaged in our democracy. In fact, any reasonable leadership entity would agree and comply, which is why DeKalb's youth, not just DeKalb Young Democrats, but all of DeKalb's youth, leaders, and organizers are so disappointed in the example set by our governor. which trickles down to, of course, the members of the Stone Mountain Memorial Association. Because when we ask why is it that we celebrate or memorialize the Confederacy here? The resounding answer that we get from supporters and members of the association usually starts with, because it's our history. So our history isn't a list of names on street signs. It isn't a Rolodex of surnames on buildings, or even a series of flags or symbols in a public park that, as was mentioned before, has absolutely nothing to do with, is not affiliated with the happenings of the Confederate States or any of the civil battles. So if this is truly to commemorate our history, where can we find the stories of civil unrest on your website? Now, there's a beautiful story about how the carving came to fruition, but where can we find the stories of civil unrest that have anything to do with the Confederacy on your website? Show me the landmarks where the soldiers had fallen, here, anywhere. Anywhere you have a flag, a name, any other symbol, show me where the blood-stained areas are. Speak of the women, the slaves, the indigenous people that also took part as the backbone of the war at that time. It isn't just about those leaders or those names that we see so readily visible. So on behalf of the DeKalb Young Democrats, I challenge the governor, the association, and supporters of the Confederacy to take a long, hard listen to this conversation and ask yourself, though of course Georgia has passed and sustained legislation to protect, monuments in general, particularly those on public property, why is it that Confederate monuments are the only bodies explicitly mentioned in those pieces of legislation? Only Confederate bodies. So we're not asking you to get rid of the Confederacy per se. What we're asking you to do is to be reasonable leaders. First, inform and educate your people by placing all of these memorialized symbols into a location where we can go and learn about the history that you say is so important that has to be displayed here at this mountain. Because as we walk through the mountain, every step that we take in each location, and again, as was mentioned previously, when we see those cabins, where do we have our history? Where do I learn something new? Where are you showing me that you're a reasonable leader who is encouraged to make sure that our most impressionable are learning and moving in the right direction so they can be greater, and Georgia can be greater as a result? So we're asking you to first deliver transparency, then deliver truth, and ultimately to deliver inclusion through education rather than through memorialization of the Confederacy. And again, I'm Dr. LaDena Bolton, Vice President of DeKalb Young Democrats.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My name is Derrica, and I am the president of the DeKalb section of the National Council of Negro Women. I am also a founding member of the Stone Mountain Action Coalition. The DeKalb section of the National Council of Negro Women stands with SMAC in support of making Stone Mountain Park an inclusive, welcoming, and friendly park to everyone. Thank you to all members of the media who are present. We all agree that Confederate memorials of all kinds are a shrine to white supremacy, and it's long overdue that this park no longer remain a place of acceptance for these memorials. NCNW was founded by an educator, Dr. Mary McLeod. And I'm happy to say the DeKalb section serves a middle school named after our founder right here in our area on Covington Highway. Let's educate not only students in our our community, but students and grown-ups all over the world about the natural beauty that exists in this park. Let's also properly and accurately educate them about what happened during the Confederacy. Thank you again to the media for helping us keep the spotlight on the fact that the Stone Mountain Memorial Association, as stated before, they get their marching orders from Governor Kemp. If he wants the Confederate flags taken down, they will be down today. If this park is the #1 attraction in Georgia and it's losing money, what does that say about our state and its leadership? Why would Governor Kemp, who guides and leads the Stone Mountain Memorial Association, continue to allow the #1 attraction to continue losing money? Is it because he is a fan of celebrating the darkest period in this country's history? Is he a fan of the Confederate flag and all it stands for? Is he okay with aligning himself with the idea that my tax dollars are being spent to maintain a park that glorifies a time when I was considered less than a whole human? Basically, I am paying to be disrespected. If this park was a military base, they couldn't fly Confederate flags. If this park was NASCAR, they couldn't fly Confederate flags. If this park were Walmart, they couldn't sell Confederate flags. Why is it okay to play games with me, with you, and everyone else who wants to enjoy this beautiful park by moving the flags from the base of the walk-up trail to the base of the park? Under Governor Kemp's leadership, there is a crisis. This crisis is called Stone Mountain Park. The park is dwindling. Sponsors are leaving. The community is not supporting the park. And again, I must remind you that taxpayer money is being used to help sustain this shrine to the Confederacy. If you can, let's put the moral and ethical reasons to stop celebrating the Confederacy on the back burner, if you can. Let's focus for a few seconds on the economic reasons to make changes here at Stone Mountain Park. If losing money is not a reason to change, then we are dealing with fiscally irresponsible leadership. There are 3,200 acres of beautiful land here at this park, and this valuable piece of property is being wasted. I wonder why major corporations in Atlanta don't have meetings, seminars, and host other events here at the park. And I can't speak for them, but I can speak for the DeKalb National Council of Negro Women. We will not spend our money at this park as long as the celebration of the Confederacy continues. And I'm asking you to join us. Again, I am Derrica Williams, and I'm president of the DeKalb section of the National Council of Negro Women.
Thank you so much to Mr. Rose, to Dr. Bolton, to Madam President Derrica Williams. Last but not least of our speakers, we have Mr. Dennis Collard, who's also a co-founding member of the Stone Mountain Action Coalition. Following Dennis, we will have our Q&A session. So after that, we will also have closing remarks from Bona, and then we will close up our president. Woo.
Good afternoon. So there's a lot of talk by members of the board, members of the public, politicians, about the board's hands being tied. The board can't do anything because of the law. And sometimes what we need to do is get into the weeds a little bit about what the law actually says and does not say. Under the current law, just to be crystal clear, this board can do whatever they find is, quote, appropriate and suitable, necessary or convenient. So the law establishes three main purposes of the Stone Mountain Memorial Association, the board that runs this park. One is to preserve the natural areas of the park. The other is to provide access to the citizens of Georgia. And the other is to maintain an appropriate and suitable memorial for the Confederacy. The appropriate and suitable could mean a small display, a little museum in some corner of the park. That's what they could determine to be appropriate and suitable. If I were to hand Mr. Rose a $100 bill right now, and if he were to say, what should I do with this? And I were to say, Mr. Rose, whatever you think is appropriate and suitable. That's the last time I'm here from Mr. Rose on that issue. Okay, so he's going to go out and do what's appropriate and suitable. The board also has the discretion to perform and do all things, quote, necessary or convenient to carry out the powers conferred upon the association. So in this sort of firestorm of legal arguments and people claiming that hands are tied without even really reading the law, I want to make it very clear today that what the current law says is this board can do whatever is appropriate and suitable, necessary, or convenient. So that's from the law that governs this park specifically. The other law that is contained in Title 50, which covers state government, that is the section of the law that deals with memorials and with moving memorials, changing memorials. And there is some language which states that generally memorials should not be relocated, removed, concealed, obscured. However, there is a provision in the law which starts with the word however. However, appropriate measures for the preservation, protection, and interpretation of such monuments or memorials shall not be prohibited. That is the current law in the state of Georgia. This board can do anything that it finds appropriate to interpret anything at this park. Now, when we talk about interpretation, some common meanings of interpretation are, for example, making plain what is not immediately obvious. What is not immediately obvious to a lot of folks, this park was created in the 1950s in opposition to the Civil Rights Movement. That might not be obvious to everybody. But it's time for the board to let everybody know that. Another definition of interpretation is the throwing of light upon details or motives that were previously unclear. I think we all know what the motivation behind the creation of Stone Mountain Park was right now. So this statutory structure, if you really want to get into the weeds and be, really detailed about it like lawyers are, and it's not always sexy and it's not always exciting to talk about the details of the law, those are the details of this law. That is current law. The board can do anything that it finds appropriate to interpret, preserve, or protect any monument or memorial. That's the general law that applies to all memorials in this state. Specifically to Stone Mountain, they can do whatever they find in their discretion is necessary to present an appropriate and suitable memorial. Again, that could mean a small display in a little museum in some corner of this park. So those are the legal arguments. Personally, I just have to say I'm very, very upset today because what we have seen is a lot of activism and the appointment of a new chairperson of this board. We saw today an announcement that the park continues to lose millions of dollars. And yet today, when somebody called for new business, there's no new business. What about old business? So there's no old business. So this park is going down like the Titanic, and there's no new or old business. We're just going to talk about what's going on July 4th, which is the old laser show that celebrates the Confederacy, by the way, and an art show, and the police are going to buy some drones for security. That's the extent of the meeting today of this board, even though here in 2021, at this time of incredible social change, social justice, when they have got to act, they are refusing to act. So someone has got to call them out on it, and that's what the Stone Mountain Action Coalition is doing today. We're calling out the board on their complete lack of any sort of constructive action that would be appropriate here in 2021 to make this park an inclusive and welcoming place for everyone.
As always, thank you so much, Dennis, for your insight on our movement that we have today. So we're now going to open the floor for questions. So I would like to call back up the speakers if they would like to come back and join me, so we can have some questions, Q&A session for about 10 minutes, and that we will have closing remarks. I didn't warn them before I said that, so I can. So do you have any questions for our speakers today?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. I was just, obviously, I know that the actions that were approved by the board last month don't go far enough for most of y'all, but how confident are you in them actually fulfilling those things that they did vote upon? And anyone can answer, I guess.
It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whether they do it or not, is nothing. It does not address the real issues. It does not address the truth. It's still hiding behind somebody's idea of heritage. So it does not whether they do or not.
And Tyler, it doesn't cost anything to bring flags down. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to move those flags to some new terrace. Okay, it costs virtually nothing to change these street names. So there's no way that the current law, even as interpreted by people on the other side of this debate, could possibly argue that the names of streets and the names of lakes are memorials that must be protected. Yet it is almost unbelievable that the board has not voted to make those very simple changes that will cost nothing. Instead, they decided to make these incredibly expensive changes that will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars when the park is losing millions of dollars because they're not making the changes that are appropriate.
And they have to borrow money to do it.
Right.
Yeah, and they're contemplating, a Freedom Chapel on top of the mountain. They think that somehow by adding things to this park, it's taking away from the fact that this is, again, the world's largest Confederate memorial, and it doesn't do that. It's like, oh, look over here, You can't in two hands say, Confederacy is good, while at the same time trying to say the opposite of that is good. I mean, they don't fit together, and that's what they continue to think they have to do, and I would suggest they're choosing. This is a choice they're making. They have a lot of power to do a lot of things here, but they're making a deliberate choice not to do them, and that's our concern.
And I think we need to be clear, when we say they, that is inclusive of Governor Kemp. We are not only speaking about Stone Mountain Memorial Association. They, as we said before, they take their marching orders from Governor Kemp. If he wanted changes in this park, those changes would be made.
And the evidence of that is that there was a board member who sought to make changes, and he was removed.
Yeah, I was wondering, so it's under state law that this memorial association of appointees is actually running this park, and I'm wondering, is there an interest in this group to try to change the law so that they wouldn't have this authority? It would be up to other people that would maybe have, more experience in running parks, like actual parks, as well as maybe running historical sites.
I mean, there's always been a movement to change the state law regarding the mountain and of course, the running of the park. Again, it's Georgia, so that's going to be very contentious. I think, has been summed up with our interpretation of the current law, changes can be made. But yes, there's a push to try to make that change through the state legislature.
None of those efforts us even get out of committee. And they've been introduced at least the last 5 years.
Yes.
Eliminate the.
To eliminate the protections for the park, to eliminate the structure of the current, running of the park, all of those have been put on the table. And of course, like Richard just said, they don't make it out of committee, but I think, my analysis as well as their analysis, you can make the changes. You saw changes be made to the square indicator, the removal of the Confederate obelisk under the same, law. And of course, if Governor Kemp believed that the law had been broken, he would have sued the city of Decatur. As of today, there are no filings in the DeKalb County Courthouse or any other courthouse by the state of Georgia to protect these Confederate monuments.
And the same thing is Rockdale County,
Athens,
Clark County, Stockbridge, right.
So they're coming down.
Monuments are falling down all over the place.
Right.
Literally.
And nobody's getting in trouble for doing it. So,
The question is, why is Governor Kemp in 2021 protecting the Old South? Does he believe that that's a pathway to continue to be the governor?
And this is not a place of history, except for natural history and indigenous peoples' history.
Yes.
It's not a place of history as in the Civil War.
Right.
Nothing happened here during the Civil War.
Do you have any more questions?
Thank you for those questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chief, for serving with us today. I'm sorry, that was
Thank you.
Yeah.
Woo!
So we are at the close of our present. We will have, Bona and Bona, our regular leadership team. We have our closing remarks. I can do all of them, we stay here as, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Kenny, no question. Do you have a question?
No question, other than, the city of Stone Mountain should have had you guys at our Juneteenth celebration. The council is divided 3-3, and the mayor gets to break the tie in favor of the committee that she created as an ad hoc committee that does not represent the city of Stone Mountain. An ad hoc committee cannot make policy for the city of Stone Mountain. All they can do is make a suggestion, and it is yet to be resolved by the city council, and this issue will come up again. Can a committee appointed by the mayor of the city of Stone Mountain make policy for the entire city? And the answer to that is clearly no. I think that the policies of Juneteenth committee and the policies that were set up by the mayor's appointed committee should have represented diversity, equity, and inclusion. Until we have a policy that represents all of that, Juneteenth celebration is a celebration of being free, but what about citizenship? If you're free as a former slave, you are not yet a citizen. That took place when the 13th Amendment came along further down the road. But as a freed slave, if you don't have the right to vote, if you don't have the right to serve on juries, if you don't have the right to exercise freedom of assembly, that part of the Constitution of the United States, First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, and yet people think that we can sweep that under the rug in order to have a party. Really? Is that freedom? If you don't have full citizenship, not 3/5 of a man, if you don't have full citizenship that includes the entire U.S. Constitution, especially the First Amendment of the Constitution, you are not free. Juneteenth is about freedom. It should be about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Without that, we're nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We all have the same sentences exactly. And we will be back again next year to have the same time. So again, please, give a round of applause for Mr. Bona.
I'm gonna walk around. Stone Mountain, the mountain has been here a long time. I'm saying August. The monuments to the Confederacy have been here a long time. NAACP's been here a long time. Not as long as these, but almost, right? SMAC has not been here a long time, but our coalition partners have. And we're not going anywhere. Hopefully it won't take as long as it took
to build a mountain, it's a mountain to grow up out of the land. Hopefully it won't take as long as to recognize how terrible these monuments are. Hopefully it won't take as long as the NAACP has been around. Hopefully it won't take long, but we're ready for a long fight. Thank you for coming.